Welcome to Gamecock Pod Live.
For the next 3 to 4 years, I'll be committed to the University of
This is Rogers again to the 25, 20, 15, 10. Rogers scores! Jackie Bradley Jr. delivers for the Gamecocks. Lost it up, looking for Kelly. Touchdown! Can you believe it?
And South Carolina is sending shockwaves through the SEC.
Frederick plays it in at the buzzer. That's a win! Unbelievable! I don't believe it!
And now, live from Studio 54 of the Gamecock Pod Studios, here's the Cockfather himself, Keith Alsep.
All right, everybody, welcome into Gamecock Pod Live on my birthday, January the 10th, episode number 1390. And in just a couple of minutes, right off the top, we will be joined by 247Sports National College Football writer Brad Crawford. Also a sneaker and a car guy and a girl dad like me. And so we're looking forward to getting in with him as coaching news leads the show today. Jody Wright, the tight ends coach at South Carolina, expected to be named the next head coach at Murray State University in Murray, Kentucky. My good friend Mick Cronin was the head basketball coach there once upon a time, and then he went back to replace Bob Huggins at Cincinnati. Mick was at Louisville, then got that job. He was at Louisville with Pitino. Prior to the Pitino incident at the restaurant and the dormitory. But also one Frank Beamer was the head coach at Murray State. Shane Beamer spent part of his childhood there. And veteran offensive coach James Coley is expected to join South Carolina staff. James Coley is a Miami guy. He worked for Nick Saban with the Miami Dolphins. He has coached at LSU. He has coached at the University of Miami. He's coached at Georgia and most recently at Texas A&M. And my understanding is he's probably not going to be the tight ends coach. There's also a running back position that is opened. And so let's just go ahead and bring in Brad and get right to it. Brad, Happy New Year.
Yeah, good to see you, man.
You joining the show. How you doing, my friend?
Yeah, first of all, happy birthday to a fellow girl dad.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, we're doing well here, man. College football's off season's officially underway, but as you know, we pretty much cover NFL junior, so there is no off season in college football.
That's right. It's 365 days a year, and so news kind of started leaking out yesterday, last night. Jody Wright becomes the first Shane Beamer assistant to become a head football coach, as he's expected to be named the coach at Murray State, a place Shane Beamer and Frank Beamer both know well. And so congratulations to Jody Wright, a great guy. The people that I know that know him just think the world of him. And so he is now going to be the head coach at Murray State. Brad, it looks like James Coley will be the newest offensive assistant at South Carolina. And Brad, he's not going to coach running backs, which he's never coached. And my sources are indicating he's probably not going to coach tight ends either. What are you hearing on that?
Yeah, I wonder if he could be a quarterback developer type, maybe on that staff. Yeah, there's obviously, like you said, there's 2 openings right now, running back and tight end. The 2 running back candidates, in my opinion, are Jimmy Smith from Arkansas and Liberty's Newland Isaac. Those are the 2, circulating for that role. I think a hire there at running back is imminent. Could be announced in the next few days. Players are back on campus, man, and obviously Shane Beamer would like to get this 2024 staff finalized so they can start working with these kids when the NCAA allows. But going back to James Coley real quick, I always make the joke that most SEC coaching hires are ancestral. And what I mean by that is guys just seem to bounce from SEC program to SEC program, kind of within the family. Another instance of that here, Beamer worked with Coley, I think, in Athens, and he comes to Columbia with some recruiting acumen. I will say that, while he was calling plays at Georgia, I think it was 2019, Jake Fromm seemed to backtrack a bit, and that offense struggled with explosive plays. So I don't think that Coley has been brought on by Shane to, mess with the playbook or call plays. That's still Dowell Loggins' job.
I agree. And I would certainly think Dowell Loggins, with a track record as an NFL quarterbacks coach, I mean, perhaps there could be some juggling of positions. Perhaps there could be another departure.
Yeah.
But just your thoughts on what James Coley brings to the table at South Carolina.
Yeah, I think you have an assistant coach now who can recruit South Florida, which is going to be huge for the Gamecocks. They've had some success in Central Florida, getting, Sky Moore from the Orlando area in the past. And the last couple of guys they've got from Northern Florida, Jacksonville area, have not panned out. We just saw Puff Howard leave for the portal to go to Florida. But I think Coley, adds a potential elite recruiter to Shane Beamer's staff. Obviously, he's worked on several high-end coaching staffs in his career under national champion Kirby Smart, national champion Nick Saban, just worked under, Jimbo Fisher at A&M before his firing. So the last 3 coaches Coley has worked under, have all had success, and they've all won national championships somewhere at big-time programs. So I think it enhances the coaching staff a bit. But like I said, I mean, Georgia fans are still having some nightmares over when Coley was calling plays in Athens that one year in 2019. So unless Dowell Loggins has another job, I have not heard that. They like him in Columbia, and he still has another year left on his OC deal.
Yeah, I think Dowell likes it in Columbia, and I think Shane Beamer likes him in Columbia. And when you look at the struggles of the offensive line, it's really miraculous they were able to do what they did, particularly Spencer Rattler. Brad, are you hearing any rumblings at all about potential changes or additions on the defensive side of the football?
Yeah, there was some scuttlebutt in recent weeks about, Clayton White possibly taking another job elsewhere, whether it would be a defensive coordinator at a G5 program or something like that. I haven't heard that in recent days. I tweeted, man, before the Clemson game that regardless of what happened that evening at Williams-Brice, there was strong indication that he would be retained. Still has, I think, 2 years left actually on his deal. And once the Gamecocks switched to that 3-3-5 type scheme in November, I thought they played a lot better on Clayton White's side of the football. Tackled better. They were able to get some of their better athletes in space a little bit more. You got more DBs on the field. You could use a nickel back. So I think if we see the Gamecock defense, how it played the last 4 or 5 weeks throughout 2024, this defense should be, considerably better than it was. But, man, there's several coaches right now on Shane Beamer's staff who are sort of heading into a contract season. And I would include Shane Beamer, the head coach, in that as well. Shane said last month during the early signing period that it's unacceptable not to make a bowl game at South Carolina. And, given the financial resources, the facilities, and some of the talent they have on roster, I agree with him. Gamecocks need to get to at least 6 wins next fall, and I think they will do that.
All right, so let's go back to the running back spot, because I do agree it is, and it's a shame Steve Spurrier is not the coach, because Newland Isaac could become Isaac Newland, just like Spencer Lanning became Lanning Spencer a couple of times on Steve Spurrier's show. What do you know about Newland Isaac? And obviously Jimmy Smith has been a name that has long been mentioned. But in these types of situations, when a name is mentioned early, even though fans mentioned Jimmy Smith early, Newland Isaac was kind of the first name that surfaced. And when it comes to Shane Beamer, generally speaking, that's been the guy that gets the job.
Yeah, and we can go back to as early as last season, last November, when, Dowell Loggins was kind of the name that surfaced. And a lot of us insider was like, that's a strange name. And we did some more research, and okay, well, a lot of T's are being crossed here, and he's probably the guy. I do think Newland Isaac right now is a front runner to get this running back job over Jimmy Smith. Obviously, Gamecock staff is familiar with Jimmy Smith. Stepp and Dowell Loggins and others have worked with him in Fayetteville. But, yeah, Newland Isaac, just like Jimmy Smith, they're both Palmetto State natives. And I would bet that if Shane Beamer offers him that running back position, Newland Isaac, obviously he would leave Liberty to come to the SEC. Jamie Chadwell, he's one of his top assistants. I'd probably put Willie Korn, Chadwell's OC, as his top assistant. But Newland Isaac's a guy that has a pedigree of, running the football hard. Liberty had a really good running game this season, even beyond Caden Salter, the, difference maker at quarterback there. So those are the two names that have certainly been circulating. I think it would be a good hire. And if you're Newland Isaac, you look at that running back room at South Carolina now and think, man, those are 3 or 4 really talented ball carriers I've got to work with, 3 being transfers with Rocket Sanders. And, as a follower of the program these last few years and someone who's covered SEC football for a living, if Rocket Sanders can get down to about 225 playing weight, I think he could be that, 900-yard to 1,000-yard back that he was at Arkansas a couple years ago when he rushed for 1,450. So the biggest question for me, and obviously Newland Isaac, is who are the starting 5 offensive linemen going to be, and can they run block?
All right, so for me, and bear with me here.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, a guy that is a rising star and a big-time recruiter that is an African-American running back coach, it normally does not take that guy 14 years to break into Power 5 football.
Sure.
To me, that's the one concern I have. It's not his coaching ability. It's, can this guy go and get players from the portal, players that you're going to be recruiting against other SEC and ACC and Big Ten programs for. You look at Jimmy Smith, he was a very successful high school coach, 2 years at Georgia State, bam, he's at Arkansas. Jay Graham, graduate assistant, Miami of Ohio, bam, South Carolina. Robert Gillespie, 1 year as an analyst, bam, South Carolina. Then, Tennessee. Now he's the running backs coach at Alabama. Same thing with Burton Burns. Followed Tommy Bowden after being a successful high school coach. Tulane, Clemson, Alabama. Fair or unfair?
Well, this hire would certainly buck the trend of an SEC program like South Carolina hiring another former SEC coach. It happens everywhere. Billy Napier has done the same thing at Florida. Jimbo Fisher did the same. You look at Nick Saban's staff, half of that current staff at Alabama is ex-Gamecock assistants. So it's all SEC to SEC. This would be somewhat of an outside-the-box hire for Shane Beamer. But being that he's a South Carolina native, I think Newland Isaac would be ready to hit the ground running, outside of Williams-Brice and be really excited to recruit at an SEC program. And I don't think it would take a large financial investment. I don't know his salary at Liberty, but you could probably bring in Newland Isaac on a 2-year deal. And if, something goes awry this season and the run game is not, enhanced the way we expect it to, then his buyout would be cheap, if Shane Beamer wants to, move on from him. So Jimmy Smith at Arkansas would probably be the safer hire, but Newland Isaac might be a guy too that with better talent he's going to have at South Carolina with Rocket Sanders and 2 other transfers along with DJ Braswell. Maybe he can show out in his first SEC job.
I agree. All right, so moving to that, obviously to the transfer portal, South Carolina, just like last year with the tight end room, had to totally reconstruct the running back room. They got, at the time, clearly the biggest name in the transfer portal at running back, Rocket Sanders. I agree with you, Brad. He can't play at 242, 245. He's got to get down to 225, 230 max, in my opinion, somewhere in that range. His former strength coach, Jamil Walker, who had him at that weight at Arkansas, is at South Carolina. And so certainly there's something to be said for that. But I think South Carolina with Oscar Attaway III, and then a guy who, it won't surprise me if he's not second team, and Juwan Howell from Mooresville, North Carolina, and South Carolina State. They've really reconstructed this running back room and taken it from an absolute weakness to a strength on this offense.
For sure. And getting Raheem Sanders, he's a top 5 portal player at the running back position. I think us at 247 Sports had him rated 91. That's a 4-star transfer. The Gamecocks haven't landed a ton of 4-star transfers, outside of Spencer Rattler, Juice Wells, and those guys turn out to be pretty darn good immediate impact players. I think with Rocket Sanders, what you want to see is, like you said, 2 things. He's got to lose some weight and get back to that explosion that he showed in 2022 at Arkansas. And then, number 2, he's a good broken tackles guy. And the last couple of years, South Carolina, at first contact, they've had a lot of running backs that have just gone down. And this offensive line play, has not been good enough, man, to, if it opens up a hole for a second or two, when that guy hits it, you've got to get as many yards as you possibly can. And I think Raheem Sanders is a bulldozer of sorts who has some breakaway ability too if he can lose some of that weight. But I like the addition of him. I like Juwan Howell. I think Shane Beamer mentioned that he looks like Derrick Henry getting off the bus. I mean, what a comparison. We know what a beast he was at Alabama and how well he's running the football in Tennessee in the NFL. So that's a good pickup. Probably gonna split some second team carries there. And then Oscar Attaway, not only could he be kind of a third down gadget guy, but he's going to get some carries too. So I think with Rocket Sanders, you signed a guy that if he's healthy, he's 200 to 220 carries. And then between Howell, Attaway, and DJ Braswell, those are 3 backs that this new running backs coach coming in should feel pretty good about.
No doubt. I also think that frees up a guy like Juju McDowell to be a gadget guy as well in the slot. Focus more on being a returner and a special teams player, which really utilizes his strengths.
Instead of having to bring him in on third down and go between the tackles. That's just not going to work.
Absolutely agree. All right, so Gamecocks had obviously the loss of Spencer Rattler to the NFL. Colton Gauthier, Tanner Bailey hit the transfer portal. That leaves you with Lenora Sellers, who I think everybody expects to be the starter and is certainly a high ceiling guy and flashed in limited playing time, but not a whole lot behind him. Luke Doty can play quarterback. I think they really would like to utilize him at wide receiver. You got Dante Reno coming in, but they need help from the transfer portal. And news broke yesterday, Robbie Ashford, the former starting quarterback at Auburn, 6'3", about 220 pounds.
Yeah.
He will have 2 years of eligibility, a native of Hoover, Alabama. He will visit South Carolina this weekend. He's about a career 50% passer, about as many touchdowns to interceptions, but a guy that has legs and that can run. Your thoughts on Ashford as a backup option at quarterback for the Gamecocks?
Yeah, I've covered SEC football throughout his tenure on the Plains, and I think this late in the stage with spring practice opening, 7 or so weeks from now, he would be a good depth chart get for South Carolina. The Gamecocks have to sign a quarterback before the start of spring practice. I mean, you can't walk out there with essentially 2 quarterbacks, 3 if you're including Luke Doty. You've got to wrap Lenora Sellers in bubble wrap and make sure he doesn't hit the ground if that's the case. But Robbie Ashford's a guy who can certainly run an RPO-based scheme, which is what Dow Loggins is going to do heavy, this season with a running quarterback like Lenora Sellers. I watched a good bit of his film at Auburn, saw him play live a couple times. I'm actually surprised that when they brought in Peyton Thorne last transfer portal cycle, Robbie Ashford did not beat him out for the starting job. And the issue, as you mentioned, it was downfield passing. He's just been inconsistent there. But he's a 4.5 guy, really good speed. If South Carolina could sign him, he would be one of the fastest players on the team. He had several explosive plays on the ground for Hugh Freeze this season as QB2, as kind of a 3rd and 5 wildcat type quarterback. And I do think that, worst case scenario, Lenora Sellers doesn't pan out and be this freakish quarterback Gamecock fans are expecting. Robbie Ashford's a guy who can step in and you can still win SEC football games with. But I'd be very interested to see, if the Gamecock staff over these next 2 seasons, if they do sign Robbie Ashford, if they can develop him into a difference maker with his arm. Because when he's had time at Auburn's had some bad receivers, by the way. This receiver room at Auburn has not been good. It's going to be a lot better next season. But Robbie Ashford's a guy that this late in the game, like I mentioned, I think he's a quarterback out of the portal that him or J.J. McLeod, the guy from JMU, those are 1 or 2 players that the Gamecocks have to sign.
I agree. Honestly, I would love it if South Carolina could sign both of those guys. I am intrigued to see what Dow Loggins, with his pedigree as an NFL quarterback coach, could do with a guy like Robbie Ashford to, maybe tweak his mechanics, his thought process, to maybe get him to be a 60% passer instead of a 50% passer. I do think the ceiling is there for that with Ashford. And certainly you love the size, the running ability, and the zone read with a guy like Raheem Sanders. You gotta be honest with him. If you crash down on him, he can pull it and go, and he certainly had experience doing that. So I do think that could be intriguing.
And you got to expect too, man, Lenora Sellers next September is going to take some hits. And if you want to run Lenoris, 8 to 12 times a game, you're going to have a backup option that you feel good about if he gets banged up for a quarter or a series or 2. And I think Robbie Ashford's a guy, or Jordan McLeod, who could be that for South Carolina.
No doubt about it. So you mentioned Auburn had bad receivers. Well, South Carolina had an All-American.
Sure.
And had an All-American that was on the bench, injured, in Juice Wells. Obviously, that you're not replacing those 2 guys.
No,
in South Carolina. You're not. But they have several young players. They have got 3 guys from the transfer portal. Jared Brown, a very productive player at Coastal Carolina, obviously a guy that Newland Isaac would know from his time there. Amari Huggins Bruce from Louisville, a Dillon native, and then Gage Laberdine from Miami of Ohio, who's a Louisiana native. Your thoughts on the portal additions, and do you think there's still work to be done there?
I'll go with the second part of that first. I think there's definitely still work to be done. And maybe it's the guys South Carolina already has on campus that need to be further developed. I think coming out of this portal season, as someone who's watched South Carolina football, the last couple of decades or so, you wanted to see the Gamecocks try and find a wide receiver one to at least compete with Nick Harbor for that position. And I think the 3 guys they signed, no offense to those guys, but they're all sort of still in the developmental stages, maybe outside of Jared Brown from Coastal. He's a guy that I think could potentially be the go-to threat on that offense, but I don't think they have a wide receiver one right now, Keith. And I think during spring camp, you're going to see Justin Stepp and this new hire, James Coley, sort of work with the wide receiver group, Dow Loggins included, and try to find some dogs in that room. You have to have production there. They had that with Leggett last season. He was a guy who his first 4 years at Carolina was sort of an inconsistent player. You saw flashes, obviously, during his career, but he had some issues with his hands, and then just has a monster year, probably going to be a first-round pick. So you would love to see a guy that's already on the roster, maybe not one of these portal additions, sort of develop into that. But, yeah, right now wide receiver is a position of, I wouldn't say worry, but I'm sort of in wait-and-see mode at wideout. They don't have any guys right now that I think are 1,000-yard capable, which to be a wide receiver one in the SEC, you have to have that. That's not to say one of these guys can't emerge and become that, but that's a position group that I'm looking forward to watching this spring and, kind of see how that 3 or 4 man rotation is going to shake out.
I agree. So 2 guys I do like on offense from the portal, and a guy that was very close to flipping to Texas A&M because his former tight ends coach was brought there by Texas A&M's new head football coach, Brady Hunt.
Yeah.
When you turn on the film, he's got NFL size, and he runs like Hayden Hurst. He missed last year with an ankle injury, but with the loss of Trey Knox, I think he forms a dynamic duo at South Carolina at that tight end position with Joshua Simon.
For sure. And not only is Brady Hunt, a red zone goal line threat at 6'6", about 255, he's a guy that on 3rd and 9, if you find him across the middle, he can get maybe 30 yards with a chunk play. The Gamecocks haven't had a ton of tight ends over the years who could do that at least during the Shane Beamer era. So I'm looking forward to seeing him, and he's probably a top 3 transfer portal signee to me. Him. I like Raheem Sanders a lot, obviously. And then Bengali Kamara at linebacker from Pitt. I live here in North Carolina. Obviously watch a ton of ACC football as well. And Pat Narduzzi did not want to see that guy leave. I think he is a instant starter at the linebacker spot opposite Mo Kaba and some other guys there. And that's one position, Keith, that I think this transfer portal cycle, not to sound too homer here, but I think the Gamecocks improved there. Even losing a 4-star like Pup Howard and Stone Blanton, those guys just didn't seem like perfect fits in what Clayton White's trying to do defensively. I think Pup Howard was playing out of position. I've mentioned that publicly. I thought he'd be better maybe as a 3rd down type pass rusher. It's going to be interesting to see what Billy Napier tries to mold Pup Howard into, because right now he's just not quick enough to be a difference maker at outside linebacker in the SEC. But I think Kamara's a guy from Pitt, 6'2", about 235, who runs really well, sideline to sideline, and he can pack a punch and run support too.
I completely agree. And also you have to like the production of Demetrius Knight at Charlotte this year, 96 tackles, a guy that was a high school quarterback, but 6'2", 247, and clocked at 21.5 miles per hour on the catapult. I definitely think South Carolina's upgraded there. Also wanted to mention a good friend of mine, Cedric Williams, former all-SEC offensive lineman at South Carolina, is the offensive line coach at North Carolina Central. Torricelli Simpkins, 6'5", 320, all MEAC performer, all American performer, FCS at center, a guy that has really developed. And in talking to him and others, this is a guy that a lot of people think could be a day one starter for a lot of SEC programs. And when you turn on the film, I think this, you've more than replaced Nick Gargiulo in adding Torricelli Simpkins.
And one of the reasons, Keith, that we don't have a transfer rating on Torricelli Simpkins is because just the lack of film right now from NCCU. But like you said, great body at 6'5", 320. Obviously, he was an all-conference player at his previous stop. And, South Carolina is not in a position to be telling, star offensive linemen who are interested in playing in Columbia no. So this is a position of extreme need at South Carolina. They're still have some depth issues up front. I do like some of the freshman signees that Shane Beamer has brought in, a couple, 4- and 5-star guys up front along the offensive line. But this guy's a multi-year starter at the college level, and that just speaks volumes about experience and, being a portal. Sometimes offensive linemen in the portal, it's the one position everybody needs, but they're always hit or miss. You're probably either signing a dud or you're signing a guy who's going to start 10, 11 games for you. And I think this guy, at least hearing from the South Carolina staff, is the latter. He's going to be a difference maker. And if he's not part of that starting five in September, he'll be one of the first guys off the bench and at a much needed position.
I agree. So to me, the one position I would have really liked to seen South Carolina bring in upgrades for the last 2 years has been at cornerback. No cornerback last year. I thought the secondary suffered because you had to play 3 safeties. You had to play a guy at the nickel that's just not capable of covering elite SEC slot guys. Thus far, no cornerbacks. You lose your best player at that position. No offense to O'Donnell Fortune, but to me, he's just an average guy in the SEC. What's the level of concern at cornerback for this coaching staff?
I think it's a big concern. And, when South Carolina's defense was better than it was 2 years ago, it's because it had elite corner play that created takeaways. We didn't see that a ton last season. Like you said, there's sort of a position surplus at the safety spot right now. And I'm not sure if any of those guys South Carolina currently has on scholarship at safety, even a few of these portal additions, Buddy Mack from Pitt, Gerald Kilgore, obviously, Jalen's brother. Those are both true safeties. You're not going to be able to convert those guys to cornerback. So it's a position of, I wouldn't say extreme need, but, you do have to have 4 to 5 guys that you really feel comfortable with exiting spring practice. So cornerback and wide receiver right now, two skill positions. You got to be good at both them spots, man, to win SEC football games. Those are 2 positions that I think over the next few months are going to be ironed out. And when we talk position battles here in a few weeks before spring practice begins, cornerback and wideout are going to be some widely talked about spots.
No doubt. So, Brad, last question before we let you go. Obviously, you talked about offensive line signees coming in, South Carolina adding the 5-star big offensive tackle, Josiah Thompson, a little undersized, but to me, if he hits 295, 300, he just may be too talented to keep off the field. He's like one of these guys that ends up at Ohio State, Alabama, etc. And then the same can be said for Dylan Stewart, who's probably the most college-ready edge rusher in this class. How big of an impact will those 2 guys make?
I think Dylan Stewart, man, I hate to say he's going to be an instant starter because, I look bad if he's not running out there with the ones in September, but he's certainly tracking that way. He had an awesome all-star game circuit. For that guy to be as committed to South Carolina as long as he was and to stick despite, getting Ohio State's NIL involved and that sort of stuff. It speaks volumes for the relationship that Shane Beamer and that defensive staff was able to build with him on the recruiting trail. And edge is a position that when the Gamecocks are a nationally ranked top 25 program, they're good at edge. And Dylan Stewart has to be that type of program changing player on that side of the football. I think, Taylor Edwards did a good job of finding him early. He's the director of player personnel there in Columbia. And then Josiah Thompson and Cam Pringle. I mean, we were talking about potential cornerstone type offensive linemen. And the Gamecocks don't sign a ton of those guys. And to be able to get 2 5-star level, I consider players up front at tackle in the same cycle is really impressive. And then one more guy I'll kind of add to the wide receiver room, Justin Stepp, man, he can't wait to see Mazio Bennett put on a college uniform. I've talked to Justin, and he's a guy that, he's super high on Mazio and thinks that he has a chance to really be a primetime player in South Carolina. I don't know if it'll happen his freshman season because of the adjustments and, that sort of thing, but he's a guy that he'll be scoring touchdowns soon enough.
No doubt. Well, Brad, can't thank you enough for jumping on with us. Great stuff as always. Be well. Hope the storms have passed now, and we'll look forward to catching up with you down the road. Always appreciate you being so generous with your time.
No problem at all, man. And happy birthday again to you, and hopefully see you soon at the Gamecock event.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks, Brad. All right, that was Brad Crawford, national college football writer for 247 Sports. Be right back. We'll talk a little Gamecock basketball and kind of debrief on what Brad said right after this commercial message.
If you enjoy listening and watching the Free Wednesday show, now live streaming on YouTube, and would love more Gamecock Pod daily, join our growing Gamecock family by becoming a monthly or annual subscriber. You'll be able to listen to the show every day of the week and listen to guests like J.C. Sherbert, Hale McGranahan, and John Whittle from thebigspur.com, Colin Taylor and Mike Yuva from Gamecock Central, Emily Adams from the Greenville News, Ben Portnoy, Michael Lanana, and Jeremiah Holloway from GoGamecocks.com, Michael W. Bratton, the host of That SEC podcast, and many, many more. As a VIP subscriber, you can join or listen to the weekly live Zoom call with up to 100 of your favorite Gamecocks and friends. After the show is an unrecorded overtime segment where the real scoop gets dropped and discussed. It's like going down to your local pub or sports bar and having a conversation with your Gamecock friends about last week's football game, men's and women's basketball games, and Gamecock baseball. And of course, there's always recruiting to discuss. In addition to the weekly Zoom call, VIP subscribers get the most popular podcast, The Morning After, which is released every Sunday morning during football season, and more VIP perks are in the works. Follow Keith on Twitter @KAllset, or follow the show on Twitter @GamecockPod. Go to the top of the homepage and follow the link. If all else fails, go to patreon.com/GamecockPodDaily. Join now and get up to 3 months free off an annual VIP subscription. You will love it, guaranteed. Now, back to Gamecock Pod Live.
All right, welcome back into Gamecock Pod Live for January the 10th. Let's dive into the Nana's Porch chat box. Always great to see Craig, Clint, and all the guys in there. I mean, I certainly agree at the wide receiver position. Craig Tyshawn Russell is a guy that flashed as a freshman, a guy that really needs to have a big spring. Elijah Caldwell, he just was not ready physically once the pads came on, but a guy that I have high hopes for in year two. You know, Kelton Henderson's a smaller type guy. He's kind of like the guys that you've signed, Amari Huggins-Bruce and Gage Laverdane, who I do think can be a difference maker. Huggins-Bruce, I do think, can be an upgrade from Amari and Brown. I think when you bring a guy back home to the Palmetto State, you know, it tends to work out. That jersey on the front, wearing that block C, wearing that Carolina, it makes a difference. I do think he's tougher. I don't think he will have as many problems in critical situation dropping the ball. Hey, look, we all worry about Mo Kaba's long-term health. I think you have to pencil in Debo Williams, but honestly, by the end of spring, would it surprise me if both transfer linebackers are starting? It really wouldn't. Maybe they're listed as co-starters on the depth chart, but let's not forget about Jaron Willis, who, quite frankly, is a guy that should have been playing earlier in the season. And if Clayton White would have gone to that 3-3-5 defense early in the season, you saw the secondary settle in. You saw a guy like Bam Martin Scott play a lot better. Okay. You saw Jaron Willis playing better when they broke that out at Texas A&M. I was there that day. That kid can be a difference maker, in my opinion. Pup Howard, I'm with Brad. I've said it. Anybody that's not a stranger to Gamecock Pod Daily knows my thought on Pup Howard has always been, I expect him to be a defensive end, or if you're in the three-man front, he is a jack or a buck, which Alabama and Georgia use. And really, is he fast enough, quick enough, explosive enough? I don't know, but I know this much. Kyle Kennard is. Dylan Stewart is. I also think Desmond Umeozulu is going to take a big step forward this year as well. JT Gear, another guy I like. He was having a fantastic camp and then got a high ankle sprain the last week, and he just never was healthy. And I can tell you, when a guy gets a high ankle sprain, unless they're off of it or unless they have that surgery on it to tighten up that ligament, they're just not going to be the same, because that's about a 12 to 13 week recovery injury. And we all know he was not off of that ankle for 12 or 13 weeks. Spalding is back. He should be dependable. Maybe he could, if healthy, which he has not been for much of the last 2 seasons, perhaps he could be a guy that could play corner. I would still like for South Carolina to find a guy. Maybe James Coley is a dude that can bring a guy from the transfer portal at corner, because I do believe he is an elite recruiter. He's got strong contacts all throughout the SEC footprint, particularly in South Florida. Certainly Texas A&M has had a lot of guys in that transfer portal, and maybe some guys that would be willing to follow him in the transfer portal. All right, so Gamecock men's basketball last night. South Carolina starts the game pretty good. They're up 13-6, and then the turnover started. The shots stopped going in. Couple of things here. You guys continue to get in the chat box. I'll go back to football in just a couple of minutes. But I've said it. You saw it on Saturday. You saw it last night. BJ Mack continues to struggle against SEC athleticism and size. 1 for 9 on Saturday, 2 for 10 last night, really 2 for 5 in the first half, 0 for 5 in the second half. Never got to the free throw line in the second half. Alabama, one of the highest scoring offenses in the country, the highest scoring offense in the SEC. All of their losses have been to ranked opponents. Okay, when Clemson went out there and beat them, Alabama did not shoot the 3 ball well at all. You knew going into this game for Alabama that you were going to have to deal with Mark Sears. He is the SEC's leading scorer, and you did nothing to even remotely slow that dude down. Okay. 10 of 13 from the field, 6 of 8 from downtown, 5 of 5 from the free throw line, 31 points in 36 minutes. He was unstoppable. And to me, let's go to the Dawn Staley philosophy, okay? When you play a great three-point shooting team, you can't allow them to shoot threes. You got to run them off the line. Dawn Staley says we got to make them 2 us and not 3 us. In other words, we're not going to let them stand out there and shoot 3-point shots. South Carolina allowed Alabama to do that. They were 15 for 34. When they make 15 threes, you're just not going to beat them. That's 44% from 3. Meanwhile, Gamecocks just could not throw it in the ocean, particularly in the second half. Not good the first half, 11 for 28, 3 for 13 from 3. Meechie Johnson had 8. Talon Cooper had 8. BJ Mack had 7. The second half, Alabama opened the half on I got it written down here somewhere, 13-0 run. They were up 30-29, 14-0 run. That was 34-29. Then they went on another. They were up 44-34. They went on another 10-0 run to make it 54-34, and the game was over. And is really South Carolina only scored 10 points in the first 16 minutes of that game. I mean, literally with 4 minutes and change to go, South Carolina had 39 points, and they had 29 points at halftime. And they did nothing to slow Alabama down. You look at the comparison, South Carolina, 5 of 25 from downtown, 17 for 55 from the field. You're not going to beat anybody shooting that. Neither team got to the free throw line a lot. South Carolina, 17 turnovers. Alabama out-rebounds the Gamecocks. 15-5 on second chance points. 16-7 on fast break points. Alabama, 15 assists. The Gamecocks just 8 assisted baskets on 17 makes, which is a great percentage. But if you're only making 17 field goals in the entire game, you're not winning that game. And, Stephen Clark, no points. Miles Studi, a no-show. When Miles Studi is not scoring double figures, South Carolina is not going to win SEC games. It is that simple. The only 2 players in double figures, Meechie Johnson, who was 6 for 18, that's 33%, just 2 for 9 from downtown, 4 turnovers, just 2 assists. Talon Cooper, 10 points, 4 for 8, 2 for 5 from downtown. 1 assist, 1 turnover, 4 rebounds. Just not a very good night. Colin Murray Boyles, just 4 points in 21 minutes, 5 rebounds, only 1 turnover. Josh Gray, 2 points. Benjamin Bozeman's Verdant, no points. I mean, you got nothing from him. You only got 4 points from Zach Davis, who was 1 for 4. Jacoby Wright's giving you next to nothing right now. You know, Jacoby Wright, Zach Davis, and Colin Murray Boyles are 3 guys off the bench that have got to play well for the Gamecocks. I think it's time. You need to make the move to Colin Murray Boyles in the starting lineup. Figure out a way to bring Stephen Clark off the bench. He just looks scared to death out there. Cooper did start out hot. No doubt about that. Craig, we can't drive and kick because, I mean, you should be able to. Like Talon Cooper should be able to drive and kick, and you should be able to kick it to guys like Zach Davis, Jacoby Wright, Michie Johnson. Okay. I mean, those guys should be able to score. You're going to have to go to a 3-guard lineup at times to be able to do that. Zach Davis is going to have to start hitting more threes to do that. I don't think that's Colin Murray Boyles' game. I think he is a mid-range guy for sure there. And so, look, this did not surprise me. Alabama is, you know, very highly rated in all the metrics. All their losses are, except Clemson, are the top 10 teams. And then Clemson certainly a top 25 team. Here's the good news. You're at Missouri on Saturday. Missouri is number 118. 118 in the net. 104 in the Ken Palm. And the real-time RPI, which had not been updated when I checked it, Missouri was number 186. This is a must-win game for Lamont Paris. If you want to make a run at being an NCAA tournament team and get in as a, you know, as an 11 seed, a 10 seed, a 9 seed, you got to beat Missouri. Okay, if not, you're going to have to upset some teams you're probably not going to match up with very favorably at home. All right, let me tell you about my good friend Brent Skinner at BP Skinner Clothiers, located now in the heart of Columbia's historic Vista. BP Skinner is all about building their reputation on the perfect fit of trust, quality, service, and style. It's their privilege to provide you professional and individual attention to help create a wardrobe that distinctly identifies you. Excellence is their passion. They strive to make their quality and service as exceptional as the customers they serve. Brent has been building relationships with his clients for 17 years. He started BP Skinner Clothiers in 2012 with his wife Marlo. Josh Colvin does a great job there on the floor. This is a Gamecock family owned and operated business. Brent believes in providing his clients with the best quality clothing at a fair price. His attention to detail and commitment to ensuring his customers look and feel their best sets him apart as one of the best clothiers in the industry. Let Brent Skinner and Josh use their reliable experience in custom menswear. Let them go to work for you, whether it's sport coats, slacks, custom-made dress shirts, neckties, shoes, belts, pullovers, vests, suits. Maybe it's a special occasion. Maybe you go to the store and you just can't find something off the rack that fits you. Go to BP Skinner Clothier. Not only do they do the custom-made wardrobes just for you that are measured and manufactured just for you. Okay, but they've got the Holderness and Bourne Gamecock pullovers, polos. They've got the Imperial caps, the ones you've seen Spencer Rattler wear, the gray ones. I'm wearing my Garnet Holderness and Bourne pullover today. BP Skinner, a guy that is a good friend, and I've never heard anybody say anything other than how I feel. Brent Skinner, one of the best in the business. Check them out. BP Skinner Clothiers, located at 1003 Gervais Street in the heart of Columbia's historic Vista. All right, Gamecock women's basketball. They beat Mississippi State by 19. Dawn Staley was not happy. She said it was discouraging. I think this young but very talented team, they won all those games. They racked up 100 points on Notre Dame, 114 on Maryland. They, beat Utah on a neutral court. They beat North Carolina. They beat Duke. And I think they've kind of been coasting because there's not any ranked opponents on the schedule. You've seen some slippage. Just 14 for 34 on layups, according to the live stats on StatCast. In my experience, that means they were probably about 14 for 42 from point blank range. That's just unacceptable. Okay. You've got to make, 60, 70% of your point blank shots. Too sloppy with the ball, allowing for the second straight game a player to go off for like a career high on defense. Dawn Staley kept her team in the locker room for almost 50 minutes. Normally they come out to the media in the post game 20 to 25 minutes. After the game, it was between 45 and 50 minutes. And Breezy Hall, I call her Threezy Hall because she has become the second best three-point shooter on South Carolina's team, right there with Tahina Powpow. And she's a leader. She's a straight-up baller, and she's one of the veterans. This is her third year at South Carolina. She said it was not up to their standards, and they were not happy at all. I expect Dawn Staley got their attention. They play at Missouri tomorrow night, a place where South Carolina has lost some games out there. They've been upset a couple of times out there. Dawn Staley's been ejected from the game out there. I do expect South Carolina to get back on track. They are 8-4 there against Missouri since Missouri joined the SEC. All four losses have come on the road. South Carolina beat Missouri 81-50 last year, which included a breakout performance from Ashlyn Watkins, 13 points, 6 rebounds. She is an integral part of this team, and she's also one of the leaders in block shots in the country. 2 years ago, the year South Carolina won their last national championship, they lost to Missouri December the 30th, 2021 in overtime, 70-69. And South Carolina, that was their first SEC game. They didn't lose again until the championship of the SEC tournament to Kentucky, and then they swept through the NCAA tournament. By the numbers, 4 Gamecocks average at least 11 points per game in SEC play. Gamecocks are plus 15, outscoring SEC opponents in the paint. And Raven Johnson, 24.4 with her 9.3 points per game, and her teammates are scoring 12.6 points per game off of her assist. She accounts for almost 25% of South Carolina's offense. So lots of other numbers I could read off, but we will see what South Carolina does tomorrow night. I expect a strong bounce back performance from them. I do agree with Brad Crawford as of now, strangely, but certainly, quintessential Shane Beamer hire, Newland Isaac at running backs coach. I'd say he's the leader in the clubhouse as of today. Things could change. I also would expect James Coley not to coach tight ends. There could be some shifting of duties there. We will see what happens. Maybe he does coach tight ends. And then are there other changes? I know there have been other changes that have been rumored. Stay tuned to Gamecock Pod Daily, and certainly we will be back next Wednesday on Gamecock Pod Live. Tomorrow, my guest will be John Whittle from thebigspur.com. We'll talk Gamecock men's basketball. We'll talk football coaching changes. A board meeting could be scheduled for the end of the week. We will stay tuned to that. And then on Friday, Mike Yuva, two-time Emmy winner from Watch Fox 57 now at GamecockCentral.com. Let's see. Reading here. So we will see what happens. We do know James Coley is in. We do know that there's expected to be a running backs coach hired, and we will see what happens there. So it's my birthday. We're going to cut it short today. I'm going to relax a little bit, spend some time with the family, and certainly stay on top of all these coaching potential moves that could be happening. And let's see what happens with Robbie Ashford this weekend. Could he be coming in as the backup quarterback at South Carolina? So appreciate Judah saying happy birthday. Appreciate all of you guys and gals that tune in. We had between 75 to 85 people in the Garnet Black Town Hall last night. That was about an hour and 45 minutes. Lots of good stuff there. And certainly our premium subscribers heard the name James Coley last night. So we'd love to have you. If you want more of this podcast every single day, go to patreon.com, patreon.com/Gamecock Pod Daily. Get this podcast every day and the Garnet Black Town Hall for the cost of just one trip to Starbucks per month. So for Brad Crawford, this is Keith Allsep saying God bless you all. I hope nobody was negatively impacted by the storms. Thoughts and prayers go out to the folks in Bamberg. I'll be back tomorrow with John Whittle. Until then, go Gamecocks and God bless you all. I'm out of here.